Nile Rodgers from the group Chic, and you're watching Noise 11.
And we welcome into noise11.com. Nile Rodgers, welcome back to Australia.
Oh, how are you?
We've got quite a history to talk about here, and I mean, wow, this story goes way, way back. I think it even started at Sesame Street, didn't it? Whereas
Yes.
a lot of people learn their trade.
Yeah, I was. That was my first real professional job where I got a weekly paycheck. It was great.
And then working at the Apollo Theatre.
Yeah, that was exactly the progression. I went from Sesame Street to the Apollo Theatre, to a group called New York City. We had a hit record called "I'm Doing Fine Now Without You, Baby," and then Chic
and a few other things that we'll
Yeah,
talk about
along
over
the
the
way.
next few minutes. Yeah. Well, just on the Apollo, because you were in the backing band at the Apollo Theatre and
Yeah.
backing people like Aretha Franklin, and you must have been in your early 20s at that point.
Yeah,
that must
very.
have been an incredible experience for a young guy at the time.
It was frightening and exciting as hell. It was. I used to call it the Black Coliseum. It was thumbs up or thumbs down every night. It was great.
Yeah. When Chic came along, and I guess it was all around that same time that Saturday Night Fever was happening. What came first? Was it Chic, Saturday Night Fever, and what drove the whole disco boom at that time?
Oh, Saturday Night Fever absolutely came first. We were a band at that time. We existed, but we didn't have a record deal. So the club that they filmed Saturday Night Fever in, 2001 Odyssey, we used to gig there with a disco artist named Carol Douglas. And she had a record called Doctor's Orders. So we had been gigging around the world with Carol. While they were actually filming that movie, we were on set. So so we were not Chic yet. We were called the Big Apple Band, but it was the nucleus of what would become Chic.
Mm-hmm. And I guess you weren't even aware that the Bee Gees were Australian. Robert Stigwood, who was putting that movie together, was Australian, and here you are all these years later in Australia.
We had no clue. As a matter of fact, what was funny is the first time we met the Bee Gees was a year after Saturday Night Fever. So what wound up happening is, in our debut year, if you will, because we came out at such a strange time, we didn't meet the Bee Gees until after we had put out our second album. But after we put out our second album, we had also had Sister Sledge. Mm-hmm. So now in just, over a few months, we have the first Chic album, which is, got Dance, Dance, Dance and Everybody Dance. And then we have the second Chic album, which has our biggest record and Atlantic's biggest record, Le Freak, mm-hmm. and I Want Your Love. But then we also have We Are Family and He's the Greatest Dancer. So we have 6 singles in this meeting, or this BMI songwriters dinner. And the Bee Gees the year before had Saturday Night Fever with all those big singles. So we were in the bathroom together, and they were going, who the hell are those guys winning all these awards? And we're standing right next to them. It was hysterical. I was like, it's us. Yeah. Because we were sort of a very anonymous kind of group, which is how we did our thing. I mean, and certainly you couldn't make the connection that the same guys who just did Freak Out are the same guys who wrote We Are Family and He's the Greatest Dancer.
Yeah. And I guess, a lot of acts have a signature song. You have a signature sound. And when were you familiar that you had a signature sound?
Yeah, it sort of became a little more obvious to me years down the road, because I was not trying to have a signature sound, so to speak. I was actually just doing what I thought was best for each song and each record. And as time progressed, I realized that what sounded best for the song was my approach to playing guitar. It's just something that happened. It wasn't a plan. It's just it's just the way it was. I would work on a song and I go, well, it would sound better if I do this. Mm-hmm. And that became the style.
Yeah. I guess obviously a lot of the big stars of the time were recognizing the fact that you had a sound, and you started to get phone calls. People like Diana Ross approaching you to produce the records.
Well, Diana Ross actually came to see us live, which is a really interesting thing, because we didn't know anybody famous like that. And so the very first big superstar I ever worked with was Diana Ross, because she came to see our show, and her exact words was, "Oh, that was really cute," which we thought was funny because the crowd was like pandemonium. They were losing their minds, and she went, "It was cute." I was like, "Okay, I guess you're Diana Ross. I guess we could be cute."
Yeah.
But I think what she was responding to is our first incarnation of Chic. We had many more women in the band than guys, and that really was an interesting thing. Our horn players were women, and we had the violin players, and then we had Luther Vandross and whatever girl he would have with him, and then we had two girls up front. So it was like, yeah, I guess it was sort of cute in a way, and the fact that our music was so power funk oriented, four on the floor dance music. But after that first meeting with Diana, we went on to make the biggest record of her career.
Oh yeah.
And it started us on a path of working with stars. Like, it's amazing that the very first star you work with is one of the biggest in the world.
But David Bowie then coming along, with Let's Dance, and again we're talking now somebody from outside the United States. Up until that point, you were dealing with, I guess, American artists, and suddenly the world started taking notice, didn't it?
It's funny. I never even thought of it like that, but yeah, you're right. Because in my mind, when it comes to music, the world is really flat to me. But I've always worked with international artists, but that's right, because David came, and then right after David was INXS. So we went from the States to England to Australia, and the Australian act is really what made our world expand. Because when we did, well, it wasn't we at this point. Now it was me working on my own. But when I did Original Sin by INXS, Duran Duran happened to be on their world tour, and they happened to be in Australia, and they were at a party that song got played at. And next thing I know, they called me up from that party because the guy, Molly, who was down with INXS, had my phone number because Michael Hutchence had my number. We were talking all the time. They just called me up and said, "Hey, we want you to do the next Duran Duran record."
Wow. And that really led to a whole lot of Duran Duran records, didn't it?
Yeah.
Including the complete album with Notorious.
Right. We're still amazingly great friends to this day. I just saw John Taylor 2 weeks ago. I was doing a gig with Bono, and I look out in the audience, and there's John Taylor. It was so cool. My career with Duran is probably the longest sort of spiritual partnership that I've had with any artist.
Wow. What about, let's go to the B-52s. I could just drop names here for forever. We'll mention B-52s. And again, Love Shack was a massive hit around the world. Did they come to you and say, "Nile, we need that sound"?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't the sound. You see, that's the thing, is that because the B-52s album certainly doesn't sound like Chic or Bowie or anything like that, or INXS or Duran. Whenever I work with an artist, basically I join the band, and I do what I think is best for that artist's next step in their career. I become a complete fan, and I think I look at the arc that they're on, the musical arc that they're on, and I try and make their next record, not their last record. And so when it came to the B-52s, the real story is they told me that they met with a fortune teller in the woods outside of Woodstock, who has no television or access to radio or anything like that. And the way that you make an appointment with this woman is you have to track her down. And the woman told them that they had a list of producers, and the woman said the vibe is with this man right here. That's the B-52 story. They told me that, and they've confirmed it. Every one of them that I talked to said that's exactly what happened. So they came after me, and the very first thing we did was a song called Cosmic Thing for a film that was made by Julian Temple called Earth Girls Are Easy. And Cosmic Thing was such a powerful song and such a great connection, we wound up calling the album Cosmic Thing, because it was almost like cosmic.
Mm. And what about Madonna? Tell me about that experience.
Working with Madonna is one of the best experiences of my life. I mean, we became closer after the work because I make records very fast. So we finished the record in a matter of weeks. The relationship grew out of us waiting for the record to come out, planning, figuring out what the videos were going to be and all that sort of stuff. I've never met in my life anyone more dedicated, more hardworking than Madonna. I mean, she's a force of nature.
Mm. How does she compare then with working with Mick Jagger?
It's a whole different thing. I mean, Mick Jagger at the time was already Mick Jagger. Mick Jagger was a star when I was a child. Mm. So he was already Mick Jagger. Madonna was...
She was on the way up.
A star in her head.
Yeah.
She was... She would even introduce herself and say, "Oh, hi, my name is Madonna. I'm going to be a superstar." And I'd like, "Oh my God, you can't say that." But she would do it in such a disarming, charming way. But she was positive about it. I just love that about her. She was so determined. You have to, especially as a producer. I mean, there's no greater gift than an artist that's loaded with positivity because they're so focused and they know where they want to go. It gives me a lot of information so I can always keep the project from going off the rails because I know what that artist is feeling.
Mm. Well, I guess with Jagger, he would have been over 20 years into the career of the Rolling Stones when he did that first solo record.
Right.
So how mindful were you of this man's heritage and dabbling with that heritage on this record?
Well, I mean, the Stones are one of the most important bands in the world to me. By the time I worked with Mick, I thought it was a huge privilege that I'm doing Mick Jagger's first solo record. I mean, that was incredible to me. And my relationship with him was extraordinary. I mean, we hung out every night. We did so much stuff together. He embraced my concept of, the record and how we were going to approach it. And of course, I mean, my feelings for the Stones and watching the different incarnations of their musical interpretations has been really important to my life. I mean, a couple of years ago, I went out with John Mayer. We went to a record store, and he said, "Okay, I'm going to give you one of the most important records in the world to me." And I told him I'm going to give him one of the most important records in the world to me. So he gave me Coldplay, and I gave him the Rolling Stones, Their Satanic Majesty's Request. Mm-hmm. And he didn't know anything about the record.
Yeah.
I said, "You just got to check this out because this is the Stones in a place that you've never heard them before, and it's just a brilliant album."
And a very unusual album to pick for a Stones record because it was probably their least successful record as well.
Really? I didn't know that. See, to me, it's one of their best. 'Cause I love songs like Citadel and 2,000 Light Years from. I mean, that's the
classic.
I'm a hippie, so that's anything psychedelic and good is amazing to me.
You can get away with anything in this world by just saying I'm a hippie. Let's we can only hit the tip of the iceberg with this story because you've had such an amazing career. But Daft Punk.
Yeah.
The most successful record of 2013. How did that come about?
I met Daft Punk about 17 years ago, right after my partner Bernard Edwards passed away, and I went to a listening party, and we met there, and we had a really, really great intro, and and they were telling me how much they ode to Chic, and of course I listened to the record and there's like Chic samples and a lot of Chic influenced stuff. But I didn't know that at the time. I just was meeting them and I liked their record, The Funk, and it was just a great meeting. And then we tried to get together on 2 different occasions, and it didn't work out. And the third time we tried to get together, it did work out. I was available for one day, and they came over to my apartment. And I'm being very honest here, I don't know if they played any demos. I know that was their intention. They only wanted me to do one song. So I don't remember them playing Get Lucky for me at my apartment. They may have, but there's no conscious memory. What I do remember was them describing the whole project, the sort of holistic concept of what they were doing. And I was enthralled with that. I was like, wow, that sounds cool. And then when I got to the studio, which was Hendrix's old studio, Electric Lady, which is where I've recorded the very first Chic single, Dance 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 Yowza Yowza. It's where I recorded Hall of Notes. I've recorded INXS there. So I told them these stories, and they said, really? I said, yeah, this is where we recorded, the very first Chic single. And then they said to me the magic words, so how did you make Chic records? I said, well, this is what we used to do. And that's what we did. And Get Lucky evolved out of that.
Fantastic stuff. And what are we going to be hearing from you in 2014? No doubt you've been in the studios while you've been in Australia.
It's staggering the amount of records that I've written this year, and it's unbelievable. I mean, while I've been in Australia, I've done at least enough material with Carl Cox to do, in my day, what would be an album, a full album. Yesterday we had an exceptional session where we did something that I think is groundbreaking. I've never even thought about doing a record like this before, and it started with us just jamming, and they heard me playing that, and they were like going, Nile, we've always loved your records where you solo, but no one really knows those records. They're big to him because he's a DJ, and also he follows Chic. He started out, the very first record he ever bought, he told me it was a 12-inch of Chic. Our first record, Dance 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 Yowza Yowza Yowza, and he said he had never heard anything like that. So he said ever since that day he's bought every single record that Chic has ever put out. So he obviously knows my history. So when we got together, he focused on my guitar. He wanted it to be all about guitar, which was interesting for Carl. And we went into this funk direction, sort of jazzy house direction, and I think what we did is amazing. I mean, we've had 2 days of recording that have been just wall-to-wall songwriting.
And that's where the story will be to be continued, I guess. It's been an absolute pleasure to meet you and talk to you and hear the Nile Rodgers story from the man himself. Nile Rodgers here at Noise 11.
Thank you.